12 minutes away from 8 o'clock if you're keeping an eye on the time. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of GNT if you've just joined us. I'm afraid this is not a good story, but we need to talk about it. A very bitter taste, ironically, in the mouths of over 14,000 workers at sugar producer Tongaat Hulett. They could lose their jobs after business rescue practitioners missed a payment deadline in October. Now, just the background for you, they were meant to pay around 400 million rand for sugarcane deliveries in September. So what has gone wrong? Well, let's hear from the chairman of the South African Canegrowers Association. It's Andrew Russell joining us this morning. Andrew, good to have you on eNCA. I appreciate this. And I think before we even get to how this payment was missed, when you hear about 14,000 jobs possibly being lost in a situation like this as well, and 14,000 workers not getting paid, the knock-on effect of that is staggering, isn't it?
Yes, it absolutely is. Those 14,000 jobs are farm workers that are supported through the cane industry. There's 4,300 growers that are affected by this situation with Tongaat Hulett, and it is going to have dire consequences if we can't find a solution quickly to get those, to pay those growers and to get those mills operating again.
So I understand either you have met or you are planning to meet. Just help me get the timelines right here. Andrew, the Canegrowers Association, the business rescue practitioners, has the meeting happened? If so, what happened? If not, what are you expecting from it?
Yes, we'll be meeting with them later this morning as the Canegrowers Association. What we want to highlight is the need to prioritize the payment to growers and prioritize the capital that's needed to keep the mills operating for the rest of the season, and then obviously into next season. That will be our goal. We also want to better understand exactly where the growers stand with regards to their position as creditors. And we want to offer our services in trying to find solutions to the situation, which, if it isn't resolved, will have those dire consequences that you mentioned earlier.
Let's just flesh out those dire consequences for a moment. I think anybody who uses sugar in the country, and we're talking from a personal perspective, from a production perspective, from an industry perspective, how damaging is this? How much of a nightmare will this be, Andrew, if we were to lose a company the size of Tongaat Hulett? How damaging would that be? Paint a picture for me.
Well, the three Tongaat Hulett mills and the refinery that are affected by the situation operate on the north coast of KwaZulu-Natal and Zululand, and there are over 15 towns and communities that are supported by the value chain that goes around growing and milling and moving and selling the sugar and the molasses that's produced. So as well as the 14,000 farm workers, the 4,300 growers, there are numerous logistics operators, input suppliers, banks, all of those support services that are needed to sustain the industry. If those mills close their doors, they will all be impacted and affected. And it's happening in the deep rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal, where there are not a lot of other options available in terms of employment and in terms of just a means to obtain a livelihood for those growers that are currently growing sugarcane. There isn't an obvious alternative to sugarcane for those small-scale growers and for many of the large-scale growers as well.
Because we're talking about this 400 million rand for the sugarcane deliveries that was missed in October. Now we're very much into November as well. And I see a figure here. Andrew, talk to me about this and your expectation, this 345 million rand that's expected to be paid out end of November. Do you sense we're going to have another problem, non-payment, end of November?
Well, the solution to paying the growers for their September deliveries, which the payment was due in October, that solution needs to encompass the cane that was then subsequently delivered in October and will become payable at the end of November. So in terms of the finance that's needed to restore the value chain, that is very much part of it, and it needs to be borne in mind that there will be another payment due at the end of December and probably a fourth one at the end of January for any cane that was delivered in December. So this is an immediate problem. It's also a medium-term problem.
Just very briefly, Andrew, I just want to squeeze this last question in before I say goodbye to you. Any light at the end of the tunnel that you can forecast?
Well, we do believe that the business rescue practitioners that have been appointed are working hard to engage with bankers to see whether they have an appetite or find ways to persuade them that the public interest in this case warrants the risk. And we're also talking to other stakeholders in terms of finding the necessary finance to not only get address the immediate solution, but also to provide a long-term solution to the woes that have beset Tongaat Hulett.
Oh, I was certainly going to be touching base with you again. Perhaps after the meeting, we'd like to hear how that meeting goes with yourselves and the business rescue practitioners later this morning. Chairman of the South African Canegrowers Association, Andrew Russell, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.